Thank you. The next item of business is a debate on motion 5802 in the name of Christina McKelvie on behalf of the Equalities and Human Rights Committee on Hidden Lives, New Beginnings, Destitution, Asylum and Insecure Immigration Status in Scotland. Can I ask those members who wish to speak in this debate to press the request to speak buttons now? And I call on Christina McKelvie to speak to and move the motion on behalf of the Equalities and Human Rights Committee. Convener, 10 minutes or thereabouts, please.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. Before I set out the committee's main findings, I want to say something which I hope will set the tone for today's debate. Destitution is first and foremost a humanitarian issue. People who are destitute are one of the most vulnerable groups in our society, and they deserve our compassion and our support. A human response, one that seeks to protect them, treats them with dignity, fairness and respect. In truth, Presiding Officer, we found the subject matter of our inquiry a difficult topic. Much of the evidence we heard was harrowing. We visited Shakti Women's Aid and heard from Hemmet Women's Aid, and were deeply affected by the harrowing stories from the women there. Our report concerns lives that have been shattered through torture, exploitation, abuse and fear. These are hidden lives, but they are no less valuable than our own. We are seeking a new preventative approach, one which focuses on new beginnings. Our report, Hidden Lives, New Beginnings, asks a lot of the Scottish Government, and it also calls on the UK and Scottish Governments to work together. We want a better life for those who come to the UK seeking protection, seeking sanctuary, but instead become destitute, fighting at the very least for an existence and at the very worst for survival. Our report is wide-ranging, as this particular aspect of destitution has not been looked at before by a committee of this Parliament, and we have made a large number of recommendations. Time will therefore not permit me to cover them all, but I am sure members of the committee will highlight other aspects of our work. I will therefore focus my contribution this afternoon on some specific findings. These are the harmful impact of destitution, destitution as a byproduct of the asylum process and as a result of fleeing domestic abuse, no recourse to public funds and women escaping that domestic abuse, the importance of independent advocacy to address destitution and the need for a national anti-destitution strategy. Firstly, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the British Red Cross in Scotland, the Children and Young People's Commissioner in Scotland, the Scottish Refugee Council, the Scottish Women's Aid, Positive Action in Housing and in Gender, who made an impassioned and well-evidenced plea for the committee to consider this issue. As a committee, we succeeded in reaching a consensus on almost all of the conclusions and recommendations. This is a great achievement, given the subject matter covered, reserved and devolved areas and diverse political views. On agreeing our report, a couple of members held different positions. One dissented from recommendation in paragraph 41, which recommended asylum seekers should be allowed to register an initial claim or a fresh claim in Scotland, rather than having to travel to England, and wanted further background information. While two members dissented from paragraph 207, which concluded the Immigration Act 2016 risks exposing more people to destitution, as it provides for cuts to be made to asylum seekers' support and gives power to compel local authorities to participate in wider dispersal. In conducting our inquiry, we had been keen to hear from those who had experienced destitution. That is why we enlisted the assistance of the organisations that I've already mentioned. Notably, individual testimony represented a significant proportion of the 107 responses we received. We would like to express our particular gratitude to those who shared their real-life stories, to the organisations which worked hard to help us gather this valuable information, and also to everyone who provided written and oral evidence. I wish to pay a special tribute and say a special thank you to Olivia Ndotti, who courageously gave oral evidence to us, sharing her personal experience of destitution and her fight to gain accommodation and financial support for her and her son. News of our inquiry was far-reaching, so much so that we received correspondence, heartbreaking correspondence, from an asylum seeker in Turkey, whose family was facing destitution. The evidence gathered provided an unequivocal insight into the issues associated with destitution. A key theme to emerge was the significant detrimental impact destitution has on the individual, on their mental health, their ability to access healthcare, including maternity services, and in maintaining prescribed treatments. and the difficulties health practitioners faced treating those suffering. Glasgow Psychological Trauma Service told us, and I quote, "When clients are destitute or at risk of destitution, the impact on mental health is significant. Clinicians and service users described worsening mental health problems. Destitution also increased clients' vulnerability to further trauma and re-victimisation and interfered with clients getting the health treatments that they needed." Finish quote. It was also important for us to understand why destitution occurred. The risk of destitution was present at numerous points within the asylum and refugee system, at the pre-asylum application stage, during the asylum process and post-decision, irrespective of a positive or a negative decision. Other reasons were linked to issues of domestic slavery, domestic abuse and threat of retribution from wider family members, where women had entered the country on a spousal or student visa and on fleeing from their partner found their immigration status was insecure. During our visit to the British Red Cross, we heard from parents who feared their children would be taken away. Some recounted being told by social work staff that the only way they could help was to take their children into care, a terrifying thought for any family. And on a personal level, Presiding Officer, as a former social care worker, I found those accounts deeply, deeply concerning. We found inconsistency in interpretation and application of child protection legislation, and I've asked for local authorities to review their training and guidance to ensure that there is no room for ambiguity. Destitute people are less able to access their rights and then to challenge any decisions. We heard about gatekeeping practices by public authorities. Worryingly, gaining support was described as, and I quote again, a gruelling fight. The Scottish Refugee Council advised of the 60% of initial claims refused, 20% went on to make successful claims. Being destitute made it more difficult for people to re-engage with the asylum system and to make a fresh claim, prolonging their destitution. Kirsty Thompson from the Immigration Practitioners Association told us the complexity of the legislation, the processes and the ability to access specialist legal advice meant there was a deficit in accessing justice. Advocacy, Presiding Officer, is crucial to help people access support to address their destitution. And so we have asked the Scottish Government, COSLA and our third sector partners to provide a fully funded independent advocacy service for those who are destitute. A huge commitment, I know, but if we help people at the early stages, then we don't have to pick up the pieces in the later stages. We feel strongly women fleeing domestic violence, who have no recourse to public funds because of their immigration status, should be given access to safe refuge accommodation and provided the financial assistance they need to survive. We should be ashamed that abused women have to use pillowcases as nappies for their children because they have no access to funds. We have asked for the Scottish Government to negotiate with the UK Government on this issue in particular. Meantime, we have asked for a crisis fund to help those most at risk. Core to addressing the issues set out in our report will be the development of a Scottish anti-destitution strategy to inform a national approach to mitigating destitution. I am not sure whether the Cabinet Secretary is in a position to offer a commitment on this today. I'll understand if she's not, but we hope she will agree that this would be a positive step forward. In conclusion, Presiding Officer, the committee calls on the Scottish Government to embrace a preventative approach to destitution. We all know that prevention is better than cure, and when we help people at the early stages of their destitution, they then don't take out from the service as much as they need in the later stages, should we have been there early enough. Presiding Officer, this will benefit Scotland. People will be spared the harmful effects of being trapped in a cycle of trauma. This is people who have come from trauma, seeking sanctuary here. Opportunities to exploit people for domestic slavery or criminality will be reduced. We have just released our new strategy on human trafficking today. This will help that because people will not be forced into dangerous situations. Public services won't have the same demand on them to pick up the pieces at that later stage. And non-governmental organisations can return their focus to core business, and ultimately those who have had a positive experience of Scotland will integrate better, and so will their children. Presiding Officer, it is my pleasure to move this motion in my name on behalf of the Equalities and Human Rights Committee.
Thank you very much. I call Angela Constance over the Government Cabinet Secretary. A generous 7 minutes.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I thank the convener for her opening remarks.